we could go ahead and get into our first topic, and we're actually going to talk about EVO for the first topic. So
All
we know
right.
EVO is upcoming. You know what I'm saying? It's basically today's date is July the 22nd, and EVO is basically the first weekend in August. So we're basically right there. We're right around the corner. Um, and it's the biggest fighting game tournament of all time. And also, this is going to be the first main big tournament that we're going to actually see Sony running it, since it is to acquire Evo. So he's still on them Sonic slushes, huh? That's a long story. I think I kind of addicted both of us, but still. But yeah, the Evo numbers have been released for their registration numbers and stuff like that, and it goes as follows. So we have, for the number one game is Guilty Gear Strive with over 2,000 entries. That was
Wow.
crazy when I saw that. 2,161 entries for Guilty Gear Strive.
Wow.
Bonkers. Street Fighter Five comes in second with almost 1,000 less, with 1,320. So Guilty Gear Strive just kind of blew it out the water. Blew everybody out the water. Tekken 7 comes in at 1,220. KOF rounds out fourth. Dragon Ball Fighters fifth. And Dragon Ball Fighters was the first game to actually drop below 1,000. King of Fighters actually had 1,000,
Oh, wow.
1,014 to be exact. Then under Dragon Ball Fighters, you got Grand Blue Fantasy, MK11, Melty Blood Type Lumina, and Skullgirls rounding out last. Now I'm gonna be honest, like the thing that was kind of the most surprising for me, for some reason, I felt like Grand Blue Fantasy Versus would actually do better than Dragon Ball Fighters.
Okay.
Like, because this is the first time, because you remember before COVID happened and they had Evo playing,
Yeah.
Grand Blue Fantasy Versus was going to be one of the premier games.
Yeah.
But like it got canceled, so this is the first time coming back that Grand Blue is actually going to be able to get that light, because we know its internet is kind of so
Yeah.
I was expecting the crowd to like come out big and just really support Grand Blue, since it's the first one Evo that is actually getting that main game recognition. But I mean, I guess Dragon Ball Fighters is really showing itself to be that game that's just, look, man, like at the end of the day, y'all can say what y'all want, but I mean, worldwide, I'm still Dragon Ball. So
Yeah.
that was the only thing that really surprised me. I mean, of course, it wasn't surprising that Guilty Gear Strive had those numbers, but it definitely was like, you look at it and you just like, man, like
That's a lot
two
of people.
2,000?
Yeah,
My
dude.
goodness. Like, I mean, if you had if somebody threw a major and they just had 2,000 coming, like 500 each game for 4 games, they'd be like, okay, but they just got 2,000 for one
One
game.
game.
So yeah, that's crazy. But so you got any thoughts hearing that, and any thoughts on Evo upcoming?
Well, the thing about it is, it's like, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, because I feel like, Guilty Gear Strive, like, I expected it to do well, but I didn't know if I expected it to do better than Street Fighter. People like really, I mean, Street Fighter, as we all know, is an established franchise. Like Guilty Gear, not so much. I mean, like people like Guilty Gear, but Guilty Gear always kind of seemed like the kind of like, I mean, at least for me, like I never really heard people talk about Guilty Gear en masse like that, until like maybe a few years ago. And I mean, like Guilty Gear Xrd came out, and I mean, like some people liked it. I had some friends who played it, but I didn't know if it was like that popular. Revelator came out, Rev 2, and I'm like, okay, this is great. And then of course, people started rediscovering Guilty Gear, like the Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus R. They started doing like all the kind of crazy stuff, and found out that the character I played was basically like more or less one of the best characters in the game, which is like a conundrum I have to deal with in a lot of video games, actually. But I didn't 2,000 people signed up for Guilty Gear Strive. That is insane. That's wow. That is a lot of people for just one game. And I mean, it's really indicative of how well the game is made, I think, in some ways. Like how it feels like, in some, like when something happens in the game, and it feels like they're kind of listening to the players a little bit more. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like it's I mean, it's not like they're like necessarily kowtowing to everything that like they say, like the players say, but it's like, they're meeting people in the middle with regards to like how they're like changing, patching the game.
Yeah,
And
that was one of the things that was great about Guilty Gear Strive when it was first coming out was just how
mhm,
well they were listening to everybody and
yeah,
taking advice and stuff like that.
exactly. I don't like, did you, in the beta, they had Potemkin, and Potemkin had like his slide head where he like slams on the ground. That move in the beta, in the first beta, I remember, did damage. And
Mhm.
as most of you know, like not most of us, anybody who's played the game before knows that move doesn't do damage. It just knocks you down. So it's kind of like one of those things like Potemkin has to be able to approach you. So it's like I'm gonna knock you on the ground and I'm gonna walk up slow, and then when you get up, I'm gonna grab you. But then you say, okay, now you're gonna get damaged. It's like for characters like Chip Zaneth, that's bad because he's basically like a wet piece of tissue paper, and for all intents and purposes, as far as like his hit points are concerned, like you're gonna if you hit Chip Zaneth a good get him good a couple times, he's dead. Like that's just the way it is. He will die, and um, like for you to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna slam on the ground. It's gonna damage you, do like half your health because you're Chip. Then I'm gonna walk over, and then you gotta guess. Either I'm gonna grab you normal, or if you jump, I'm gonna grab you. I'm gonna do like what's called heat extend and grab you. And I don't know, man. Like, what do you think? I don't know. Like, I'm kind of. I mean, it's it doesn't surprise me that they got that many numbers. It surprises me that it did more than Street Fighter though. Like there's more people playing Strive than it is Street Fighter because it's like almost a complete reversal of like 10, 15 years ago when nobody was playing Guilty Gear. Well, I'm gonna say it's like not a reversal because people are still playing Street Fighter, but it's like nobody was playing Guilty Gear like 15 years ago. Like, and as far as I knew, like I was hard pressed to find anybody outside my household that played Guilty Gear.
Yeah, I feel like Guilty Gear Strive is really a surprise with how big it's blowing up. Now you could technically kind of feel it. I can remember when like we were like going through the game actually coming out and stuff like that. And one thing that, most Guilty Gear players are known for saying is that this is one of the Guilty Gears that has changed the most. Like this is the
Right.
most non-Guilty Gear feeling Guilty Gear, but you could kind of tell they promoted it that way. They marketed it that way, and the hype for the game coming out, it did feel like when it was coming out that it was going to be one of the bigger games for the FGC. That and KOF, we were kind of getting stuff like
Oh
that
yeah.
at the same time, and you could kind of tell it was still way more hype for Guilty Gear Strive. And then some of the character designs are different and stuff like that, especially like with Testament, how they changed
Oh yeah.
them and stuff like that. So they really shifted a different way with this game, and you're gonna have like the mainstays come back, the people who just off default, I'm gonna try every Guilty Gear game. But then you could tell they were kind of trying to cater it towards audiences that were trying to bring in newer people and stuff like that, and it worked. I mean, for to say you're bringing in 2,000 people into one tournament, you definitely brought in new people into your game. It's kind of like you said before this. I mean, what Gear game were you hearing in the FGC that was like in the upper echelons up there? Getting these type of numbers. I mean, my goodness, like cracking the top 7 of any like mainstream tournament that was going on. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing to see what they've done, and I mean, it's going to be one of those games when you go back in history and people are actually talking about like everybody makes the documentaries and stuff like that on games of how they did and stuff. When you get to get Strive, it's definitely going to be a game that you want to go back and study of like, man, how did they do what they did?
Hmm.
Because I mean, it's kind of been a while, long enough for the game to come out to where like if it wasn't that good, people were definitely gonna fall off from it.
Right.
But it has held, strong this whole time, and definitely online has helped with that. It was one of the first games that came out big that just had the rollback netcode that everybody was like, this is decent. Like this is
Right.
good stuff. So it's a lot of things that kind of go into it. But I mean, I'm excited for it, man. It's great to be in an era where we're not necessarily having like Capcom running everything.
Yeah.
That we could see other people can come in and actually like, run the FGC and stuff like that. And we can have like so many different games and stuff like that in the top upper echelon that people are actually talking about. So
Mhm.
that was a long rant.
I mean, like, let's, you're speaking your mind there. I appreciate the fact, like, you know, this is the forum for that, right? Like, to come out and just say, hey, man, like, this is how I feel about it. And, because, yeah, looking forward, like, I mean, looking forward at looking back, right? Like, people are going to look at this and be like, man, like, Guilty Gear Strive kind of came out and took the world by storm a little bit, because that's a lot of people, man. That is a whole lot of people to sign up for one game. 2,000 plus people to play Guilty Gear Strive. I mean, like I said, like 10 years ago, I wouldn't have fathomed that. Like be like, oh yeah, there's going to be 2,000 people playing Guilty Gear Action Core plus R. Like they don't even know what that is. Like you know what I mean? Guilty Gear Xrd, you know, Guilty Gear Revelator, like all this stuff, and it's like I don't know, man. I wouldn't. I like it was such a niche game, and it feels like nah, like it's kind of broken out of that. Like it's not really. It doesn't seem like a niche game anymore. It's it's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if this is like correct or not, and you feel free to correct me if um if you disagree. But I feel like the kind of tournament where Guilty Gear in the olden days would have gotten like close, not even those kinds of numbers, but close to that kind of numbers is like in Sea Otaku or something like that. You know what I mean? We're talking about like anime games, and it's kind of like put in like that like category with games like Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle, Blaze Blue Central Fiction, something like Melty Blood Type Lumina. Like they would have lumped all of those games in,
At
and
least they weren't in the same bathroom though.
yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, there's not enough space in there for that. Like, that stupid thing you put up on Twitter. I was so mad. I was like, dude,
Hey, that bathroom was royal, man. It'd be the bathroom you'd want to hold your tournament in. Ain't nothing shameful about it.
oh my God. It's, yeah, I mean, I feel like that if in the olden days you'd have Melty Blood in the bathroom, and then in the stall next to it there'd be Guilty Gear. Like
In
that
the
would be the
janitor's
next.
closet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like that's exactly how I mean, I love Guilty Gear, but I mean, you got to be realistic about, you can love something and then be realistic about its status in the fighting game community. And I feel like
Yeah.
back then the status was nowhere near what it is now, not even close.
Yeah, I feel the same way with Street Fighter Five. I mean, I love Street Fighter. I'm like many people that have come into FGC. Street Fighter is the game that brought you into loving fighting games. But I mean, you have to be honest. Right now, we're kind of in a point where we're tired of Street Fighter Five. The best thing you can say about it right now is that since we know by the beginning of next year, Street Fighter Six is going to be out, and people are technically playing Street Fighter Six now, and it's going to
Mhm.
be at EVO. I mean, the best thing you can say about it now is just like, hey, it grew into a great game by the end of its lifespan. Right now we're in the nostalgia phase of just like you kind of know, like when something's leaving, you're like, yeah, I've been trashing on this game for forever, but I mean, it is kind of like I'm gonna miss it. For all the things that I raised about it, it is gonna hold a fond place in my heart. But yeah, man, I mean, you have to be honest with stuff like that because you got to taper the expectations with reality and stuff like that. You don't want to be like, me out here on the internet champion for Nickelodeon All Stars, and then where is that now? You know. So they even said they're gonna get voice acting, and everybody like looked at the tweet like, "Oh, for real? All right, on to the
A
next thing."
word.
Like, and you just go on to doing whatever else you were doing. Like, we'll see. We got multiverses. You better hope you do it before they come out. So
Right.
to have the best chance that you have.